morning. It's Friday, February 20th, 2015. This is your morning edition on I-24 News. Coming up later today, as fighting in East Ukraine rages on, the war of words between Europe and Russia intensifies. Ankara and Washington sign a deal to train Syrian rebels as reports emerge of IS fighters infiltrating Turkey. And later on in the show, can anyone stand in the way of Meryl Streep winning her 4th Oscar? Good morning, I'm Meredith Ross. We begin in eastern Ukraine, where the fighting has raged in eastern cities of Debaltseve and Donetsk, as per any pretense that a ceasefire signed just 5 days ago was shattered, as Kiev warned that the Russian-supported separatists were massing for a new assault near the major port of Mariupol. The rhetoric among European leaders turned more threatening. NATO Supreme Commander for Europe, General Philip Breedlove, said yesterday that the ceasefire had never really begun and was in name only, but maintained that diplomatic and political solutions were still preferred over military ones. British Foreign Minister Philip Hammond, meanwhile, chose to remind Russia of NATO's right to review all options and that its members remain resolute and united in the face of any provocation. We're joined in studio by Channel 2 Foreign Affairs editor Rod Neer. Good morning. Thank you for being here.
Good to be here.
But first, let's watch this report by the I-24 News Desk.
Despite European efforts to sustain a crumbling ceasefire, fighting continues to rage in eastern Ukraine. According to the Ukrainian army, 13 soldiers had been killed and more than 90 Ukrainian troops were captured after pro-Russian rebels who spurned the truce forced thousands of government troops out of the key town of Debaltseve. The Ukrainian troops' withdrawal under fire is considered one of the worst defeats for the Kiev government in the 10-month war.
We were leaving and drove into a separatist checkpoint. They didn't expect us to try and break out. So they initially thought that we were their friends, separatists, Russians, or someone else. But then when a shootout started, we understood that they are the enemy. And we started firing with whatever weapons we had.
With the ceasefire strained to breaking point, President Poroshenko's call for UN peacekeepers puts new pressure on the international community to come up with a fresh response to the conflict.
We see the European Union mission in the framework of the Common Security and Defense Policy as the best option for a peacekeeping operation.
As artillery continues to rain down on East Ukrainian villages, the leaders of Ukraine, Russia, Germany and France condemned the truce breaches of recent days and jointly urged that it be restored. But representatives of the OSCE security group monitoring events in East Ukraine have been complaining for days that their team has been prevented by the rebels from entering Debaltseve, pushing Poroshenko to issue an urgent plea for international peacekeepers. Though the situation remains grim, Western nations have refused to give up on the peace deal negotiated last week in Minsk and continue to work on a solution to the biggest East-West crisis Europe has seen since the end of the Cold War.
We're also joined via Skype from Kiev by freelance journalist Vladimir Solohub. Thank you very much for being with us this morning. Now, what is the sense in Kiev? Is this going towards calm or escalation?
Well, definitely the Kyiv government and most people here in Ukraine don't see that the real calm, the real ceasefire will come anytime soon. The sad example, the sad experience of the previous ceasefire, which was reached back in September, proves that basically neither of the sides are willing to put down the weapons completely and declare the complete ceasefire. So this new step, this new twist of inviting the UN peacekeepers to monitor the ceasefire in the eastern Ukraine might bring some hope of having the complete silence in the east reached finally.
And do you think the separatists have any more credibility after the latest failed ceasefire agreement?
Well, absolutely not. Well, first of all, no one in Ukraine believes that the separatists really want the peace, because the majority of the fighters fighting on the side of the separatists are mercenaries coming from Russia, and the war for them is business as usual. It's making money. However, now a lot of European partners, a lot of European countries, especially France and Germany, who were at the negotiating table, they also see that the Russia-backed separatists, Russia-backed militants, are not willing altogether to put down the weapons and declare a truce.
All right, this is what we're seeing. We'll stay on the line, Vladimir, but we're coming back to studio with Rod here. So NATO has said that it's willing to respond to Russian provocations at this point. What does that mean? What kind of a response
They're willing to talk, issue statements, and say how much they want this ceasefire to work.
Verbal response.
Only verbal response. I can't see any military intervention from NATO's side. Firstly, because of the reluctancy of the countries involved to get into any kind of military intervention, wherever, whenever, be it right or wrong, I don't want to judge, but this is the situation. And especially with the Russian President Vladimir Putin, I don't think that anyone would want to stick a finger into his eyes. And apparently, at the moment, he seemed to dictate the developments of this conflict over there in Ukraine. In the last 24 hours, there have been some fourfold discussions between the parties to the Minsk II agreement of the ceasefire. Literally talks between the German capital and French, Russian, and Ukrainian, trying to sustain this peace agreement or ceasefire at least. But as far as the reports are coming from the ground at the moment, it's in vain.
And what do you make of the incident yesterday of the British Royal Air Force intercepting 2 Russian aircraft who were coming very close to their airspace? Now, just in the past year alone, there were 400 instances like this with Russia and NATO allied members and their airspace, 40 of which were said to have been nearly close to military encounters. So what kind of message is Russia sending by doing this?
Yes, this is a practice that was very, very common during the Cold War days. And it's developing again by the Russian military. And I think they are being instructed by the Kremlin to show the West, to show NATO that you've just mentioned earlier, to show we exist here, you have to take us into consideration. We are capable, at least we think we are, and please consider it.
Russia seems to be quite good at sending those kind of messages. Now, back to Vladimir, there are fears that the separatists are preparing for an assault on the port city of Mariupol. How strategic is this city, and what would that mean?
Well, Mariupol is a key strategic town for the separatists. I would even say that it's more important for them than Debaltseve, the city in which they basically...
You seem to have frozen there, but we'll pass you this question around.
I'd like to refer to our discussion earlier regarding the interception of the Russian bombers out of the British Isles. Yes. Well, there's another development that evolved yesterday in London. The House of Lords issued report about the way that UK and the European Union as a whole is treating Russia, and they claim that they mistreat Russia, at least they misunderstand Russia, both in the UK, both in the EU. Part of the reasons is the various budget cuts that cut on staff that understand Russian, that can speak Russian, that can analyze Russian, that can form a strategic approach towards Russia. So it seems that there is total misunderstanding of the messages that are being sent from the Kremlin towards the West, and this is part of the causes for this kind of escalation.
Well, let's hear what British Prime Minister David Cameron said about this airspace incident yesterday.
Reassure people, when this happens, what we do is we launch our Typhoon aircraft and they escort these planes out of the UK area of interest. And when this happened most recently, at no time did the Russian military aircraft cross into UK sovereign airspace. I think what this episode demonstrates is that we do have the fast jets, the pilots, the systems in place to protect the United Kingdom. I suspect what's happening here is the Russians are trying to make some sort of a point, and I don't think we should dignify it with too much of a response.
So we heard Britain's reaction, but we're going back. Vladimir, we understand you're back on the line.
Yeah, I hope I'm back with you.
So we were talking about the issue of Mariupol, this major port city, which you're saying is a major strategic hub if the separatists were to take over.
Well, absolutely. As I was saying, I believe that Mariupol is more important for the separatists than Debaltseve, which they already control. And the attempts to take Mariupol have been tried in the past. First of all, Mariupol is a seaport. Therefore, if they seize control of this city, the separatists will have access to the seaport. And secondly, Mariupol is the first major town on the so-called land bridge to Crimea, land bridge from Russia to Crimea, which Russia so desperately needs, because right now the Crimean Peninsula, which they annexed back in March, is cut off from Russia. Therefore, if taking the Mariupol will open the Russians the road to regain more Ukrainian territory and build this bridge from Russia to Crimea.
And, you know, we know that you do report from the east in the country where all this is happening. Do the people there feel that the West is supporting them? What's the reaction to the decision by the EU states not to provide lethal arms to the Ukrainian military?
Well, to be frank, Ukrainians are at some point disappointed with the European unwillingness to support Ukraine more actively, and mostly expressing deep concerns and providing humanitarian assistance, because Ukrainians, a lot of Ukrainians see that the Russian threat might not stop in Ukraine only, and if Ukraine is retaken, the Russians will move forward. Therefore, the message which Ukrainians are trying to bring to the Western countries is that if you don't stop Russia here, they will move forward. So help us stop them here on our land.
And another body that could obviously help the situation is the UN, which has been sort of quiet on the issue. Where does the Security Council stand? And do you think they'll intervene, Iran?
Well, again, they cannot intervene. They can pass resolutions. They can, declare declarations, but nothing in particular that can be done in this respect. You see, the point is, and I keep on saying it since the very beginning of this crisis, Vladimir Putin does not want Ukraine to be part of NATO. He does not want Ukraine to be part of the European Union. He does not want these two Western organizations be on his doorstep. He wants a buffer zone between Russia and the West, and Ukraine is the buffer zone. The best case scenario to get quiet in Ukraine, I think, is a sort of separation on influence, to separate the country somehow, to find any kind of modus vivendi, something that they can live with, to separate influence. Russia will have its influence on the eastern part of the country, the more Russian leaning, and the West will have its influence on the western part of the country, the western-leaning part of Ukraine. We must remember that Ukraine is sort of a new entity relatively, and this is the way that it will be solved as long as Vladimir Putin is there and he has this strategic interest.
It's an interesting prediction there, but many think that Vladimir Putin has his assumption. Many people think that Vladimir Putin has his sights on the Baltic states. He wants to take more territory. What are your thoughts on this, Vladimir? What have you been hearing?
Well, basically, this is the sentiment which I expressed earlier. A lot of Ukrainians do believe that Vladimir Putin will not stop in Ukraine only, that he will move forward more to the west. And, frankly, I think that both Poland and the Baltic states should be expressing very deep concerns, and not just the concerns, they should be acting somehow, because to be frank, this sentiment exists strongly here in the air that if Putin is not stopped here in Ukraine, he will move forward to the west, and the first countries on his way would be Baltic states and Poland.
Well, Vladimir is totally right. I also hear this from various diplomatic sources in the Baltics. They are terrified that Putin will have this. You know, Estonia has Russia on its eastern border, and Lithuania has the enclave of Kaliningrad on its western border. So Russia is there. The difference is that Putin have lost the Baltics already. The Baltics are members of NATO. If he will interfere there, this will be a real casus belli, a reason to an act of war, and I cannot see him doing it, and if he does it, I cannot see NATO and the West and the United States of America still standing without doing anything. So this is a totally different situation. This is why I think Putin will put all his efforts, and he won't give up on Ukraine.
And he probably won't have the same kind of separatist support in those countries as he does in East Ukraine.
Well, mind you, there are some minor, some Russian minorities in all the Baltics. All three of the Baltics have got few hundred thousands of Russian-speaking communities there, and in certain constellations, certain situation, I wouldn't take out of consideration that he would try to use them, and if he'd try, maybe they would go ahead with it. But I can't see him really doing it outright as he's doing it in Ukraine, because this is part of NATO, this is part of the European Union. It is fait accompli already, and any act there, any open act, there will be really a casus belli, cause of war.
Well, Rodnir, thank you very much for your comments. Do stay put for the next item. And Vladimir, thank you very much for joining us from Kiev. And we move on now to the war against the Islamic State group. The U.S. and Turkey signed a deal yesterday to train and equip Syrian rebel forces to aid them in battling the jihadist group, as well as the regime forces of President Bashar al-Assad. The U.S. military has said it is planning to send more than 400 troops, including special operations forces, to train a force of 5,000 Syrian moderates. The deal was signed as reports emerged that Islamic State militants have entered Turkey and are plotting to attack diplomatic missions in Ankara and Istanbul. The reports citing local intelligence officials also said militants with Syrian and Palestinian nationality were planning to cross into Bulgaria to carry out attacks on European Union countries. Now, still with me to discuss this is Rodnir. Thanks for still being here. But first, let's listen to what the American envoy to Ankara said upon signing the deal.
We are better off, and the region is better off. And I agree with you, this is the start, and we have a lot of work ahead of us, but I'm pleased that we have taken this step, and on behalf of my government, I want to thank you and your colleagues very much for the spirit that you approached this negotiation with, this discussion, to get us to this point, which I think really reflects the principles and the practice of our strategic partnership.
And we're also joined in studio by I-24 News senior Middle East analyst Ali Waked. Good morning, Ali. Thank you for being here. So what can you tell us about this U.S. deal with Turkey?
We know that Turkey and Saudi Arabia conditioned their support for Saudi Arabia, its participation in the international coalition against the Islamic State. But Meredith, I want to mention that exactly at the same period last year, when the regime of Assad took control of Homs, in order to raise the morale of the rebels, we saw the Turkish and the Saudis with the Americans talking about training and supplying weapons to the moderate rebels. So let's make it clear: there are no almost moderate rebels in the Syrian opposition. The Syrian opposition is mainly formed today by the Al-Nusra Front, which is the official representative of the Al-Qaeda, and of course the Islamic State that did not accept to be part of Al-Qaeda and wanted its Caliph Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi to be the leader of the jihadist groups in the region. I see very much difficulties to differentiate between the moderate rebels and the jihadists, and at the end of the day, I think that there is a huge risk that these weapons and these trainings will serve the Islamic State, and it reflects mainly the fact that for the first time since long months, that the regime is taking advantage over the strategic points in Syria. We are talking about the fact that the regime of Assad succeeded to cut the road between north and south of the Golan, between the borders borders with Jordan and the borders with Israel, and now the rebels in this region are isolated unless some voices in Israel will be supported to give some support to the rebels. And on the other hand, around the Ville of Aleppo, the regime is progressing. It is succeeding to stop the siege that was imposed for 2 years of the two Shiite cities, Al-Zahra and Nubol, and to cut the road between Turkey and Aleppo, which is the main road that is supplying weapons and military and fighters to the rebels.
Now, staying with this U.S.-Turkey deal, do you think the deal has anything to do with the report that IS fighters have infiltrated into Turkey?
The picture that we've seen of this deal being signed by John Bass, the U.S. ambassador to Ankara, and by Feridun Sinirlioglu, who is the undersecretary of the Turkish Foreign Ministry, is one deal with two totally different aims. The Americans are signing it in order to find a way to fight ISIS on the ground, which is needed, without involving American troops. So they would find any possibility, they would look for it, and apparently this is one of the ideas that they have. They would train the rebels, and I totally agree with Ali Wakad. Now, how do you vet these rebels to know that they are not ISIS or whatever? But you know, the Americans are trying to do whatever they can in order to avoid sending boots on the ground, and I'm quoting President Obama on that. Now, the Turkish part has a totally different approach. They have got one obsession. They want to get rid of President Assad of Syria. They want to oust him. And in order to do
why they weren't really getting involved in the fight?
Every way is legal. Everything is legal. This is why in the very beginning they have supported the Islamic State. This is why they turn a blind eye on many issues and many atrocities that the Islamic State is doing. This is why they do not let NATO bombers, US bombers, use NATO air bases in Turkey in order to bomb the Islamic State. Now, they don't like the Islamic State.
Of course.
They don't relate. They don't relate to it, but they see it as a possibility to oust Assad. Yeah. So this is why they are playing a twofold game here, and this what they see in this particular agreement that they signed last night in Ankara, it's a way to another way to oust Assad, and this is why they're willing to cooperate with the U.S. regarding this.
So going back to the American issue, we do want to show a report here, Ali, just one moment. U.S. President Barack Obama sought to galvanize global action against ISIS and other violent jihadist groups, speaking on the third day of a Washington summit aimed at countering extremist violence and featuring leaders from 60 countries. The president vowed to combat those carrying out the terror acts, as well as the, quote, warped ideologies they espouse. Let's watch a report summarizing the latest from the anti-terror summit in Washington.
Thursday marked the final day of a White House summit on countering violent extremism. American and European officials met in Washington to discuss the alarming radicalization worldwide, but U.S. President Barack Obama stressed the summit does not imply a religious war.
None of us, I think, should be immune from criticism in terms of specific policies, but the notion that the West is at war with Islam is an ugly lie. And all of us, regardless of our faith, have a responsibility to reject it.
The summit aims to empower civil society in hopes a community-led intervention could tackle political grievances and poverty that can lead to violence. This effort is to be made online and elsewhere to stop terror-related activity.
So we have a broad challenge here. And mostly it is to talk about facts and realities, and to take those realities and put them into a real strategy that we all implement together. No one country, no one army, no one group is going to be able to respond to this adequately. And we see that in the numbers of countries that are now being touched by it.
The U.S. was heavily criticized when it did not join hands in solidarity with world leaders following the deadly attack at Charlie Hebdo offices last January. For many, the White House summit comes too late, as more and more countries are being rudely awakened to the terror threat.
And we are now joined via Skype from London by Charlie Winter, a researcher at the Quilliam Counter-Extremism think tank. Thank you very much for being with us this morning. So what do you make of Obama's statements? Is this a new multi-pronged approach likely to work?
Well, I just hope that it's not simply rhetoric. I mean, we do need a joint approach. We need an international coordinated effort against violent extremism, not just to tackle the violent side of it, though. There needs to be more done on the non-violent side, tackling the things that make such ideologies appealing. And I just worry that world leaders don't have the appetite to deal with some of these extremely thorny problems that are often structural problems.
So Obama says he wants to tackle the ideology and yet stresses it is not a clash of religions or civilizations. Is the message likely to resonate? Will it change the mind of a single would-be Islamist fighter?
Well, I don't think Barack Obama is going to change the mind of any Islamist fighters. I think that he's well beyond the pale for them. But I mean, tackling the ideology is key here. It's tackling the ideas, the ideals that persuade someone to think it's a good idea to blow themselves up, that kind of thing. I mean, we do need to deal with some very deep intellectual issues here, as well as just reacting militarily. But it's whether this is just rhetoric. I mean, we've heard this many, many times. In the UK in particular, David Cameron has regularly spoken about tackling the poisonous ideology, the generational problem. I mean, this has been years have gone by since then, and the ideology still is doing pretty well.
And lastly, I want to touch on a report that was analyzed by your think tank, Quilliam. It says that ISIS plans on invading Europe through Libya. Can you expand on that quickly?
Yes, I actually found and translated and analysed this report. Basically, it's an unofficial Islamic State supporter. It's their account of why Libya should be focused on more by the Islamic State leadership. And while it does say, and I need to clarify this because it's been widely misreported, which is very unfortunate, it does say that Libya could be used as a gateway to southern Europe. You could use asylum seekers as a way to smuggle fighters into European cities. But this is one man saying it, one unofficial, albeit influential, supporter of Islamic State.
Yeah, you said he has a very large social media following. Well, unfortunately, that is all the time we have. But Charlie, thank you very much for joining us with your comments this morning. And Ali and Arad, thank you both very much for being here. So coming up next, we're going to discuss the Oscar predictions just 2 days away. But stay tuned for more of this morning's headlines. Welcome back to the Morning Edition. We're joined now in studio by Anthony Grant for the news that you may have missed while scanning the headlines. Good morning
to you.
Yes. Shared a little joke there before we came on air.
The beautiful and dramatic weather.
Yeah, you know.
Anyway, no laughing matter for some of you. Don't like the cold and the snow.
Yes. Okay. More to the serious news
Yeah. Back to politics ever so briefly. New York Senator Chuck Schumer has now called on fellow Democrats to attend Netanyahu's planned speech in Congress next month. So he's jumping into that fray of, should we go or should we not go? Is it good or is it not good? Yeah. So he's in the Let's Do It campaign or group, I should say. So let's see what happens with that as the date approaches.
And Jeb Bush is eager to hear it as well.
I think a lot of people are going to be eager to hear it. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a speech, and it's Congress, free speech, kind of capital of the world. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah,
but Schumer
it's very,
is on the side.
contested, so it would be interesting, to just kind of be a part of it all.
Yeah, now it's like a phenomenon.
Yes.
Back, in the USA, this little headline from the New York Daily News: former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani has claimed that President Obama, and it pains him to say it, he says, but does not love America.
That's an inflammatory statement.
Is
it surprising coming from him?
I don't think it is, and we'll have another story in just a second that sort of reverberates to that. But Giuliani is the mayor that guided New York City through the terror attack and the aftermath of 9/11, and the whole thing with Obama avoiding the use of the term Islamic when it comes to the terrorist threat that's faced in so many quarters of the world has really really dredged up a lot of acrimony. And this, I believe, is coming from that, which we'll see in just a second. But before, a very cool picture from Al Aram, Egyptian newspaper, of President al-Sisi there, inspecting the western border of Egypt in defense of the homeland, basically what it's saying there in Arabic. And what this is talking about is the Libyan Egyptian situation. Sisi is trying to project an image that he is looking out for Egypt's interests. In a picture like this, it shows him sort of on the the scene, looking very serious and like a general.
With various security forces
exactly.
and army generals.
Because at the same time, Qatar, of course, has kind of recalled its ambassador to Egypt over a spat between Qatar and Egypt, because Egypt is pointing the finger at Qatar, saying they support terrorism. Qatar saying that they don't. So again, when you see articles like this, it goes to the sort of theme or leitmotif of Sisi's whole his agenda, which is to keep Egypt secure, regardless of its diplomatic fallout, so to
he
speak.
is a military man, being a former
He
general
is.
himself and a defense minister, so I think he knows the game he's playing, and he's
And it's an important one. I mean, that much I think nobody can contest. The Times of London has a story, which we've been seeing here and there, but again, it's something that's very topical, saying that Islamists unite to devastate Syria's ancient treasures. We've talked about this story in the past, but again, it's just something that is very disturbing to see that yet again the victims of the civil strife in the region, Syria particularly, it's talking about, it's not just people, which of course is the most horrific thing, but also cultural treasures like that beautiful mosaic. I think it's a Roman one that they show, which apparently has been damaged.
And just no respect for history, no respect for the past.
Zero.
It's really unbelievable, because these are things that you cannot reverse. And Syria is so rich with this ancient history, with these ancient structures.
And a lot of it is being pilfered and sold on the black market to fund illicit activity. There are some efforts to try to salvage it, but it's really it's a struggle.
It's like as if the civil war couldn't get any worse. It's
the cultural plunder that goes with
terrible.
it is very sad. At least it's in the press. Hopefully, it will raise awareness to the issue.
Absolutely.
New York Times. Again, this goes back a little bit in a way to the Giuliani story. The White House faulted for avoiding Islamic, quote-unquote Islamic labels to describe terrorism. White House cites a strategic logic. Again, this has been a real political football in the American press, sort of the right of center versus center publications saying it's not such a big deal, making a mountain out of a molehill. Though, when even the New York Times covers this, which is basically, can be said, a pro-Obama newspaper, you know that it's actually, at least it's an issue of national conversation. Should the president, should the White House call, some would say, a spade, or kind of keep sort of just mentioning extremism in general terms. So
an interesting timing here as well, because we know the anti-terror summit is going on out in Washington.
That's where this is actually coming from, the story about that. And again, you have people like Giuliani jumping into the fray and everyone weighing in ahead of 2016. So again, interesting stuff to say the least.
Yes.
The Telegraph has this interesting picture in a headline about Germany stunning the markets by rejecting a Greek offer for a bailout extension.
Not surprising.
Not surprising. Again, Greece had sought the 6-month assistance package rather than the renewal of the existing deal that would have come with more harsh austerity measures. And again, after this German rejection, it is true that apparently Merkel and Tsipras, the new Greek PM, spoke on the phone in a positive spirit to move things forward, but as of right,
it's
a good sign, but they're not out of the woods, so to speak.
Yeah, this standoff between Germany and Greece still continues.
Still going on. Yeah, still February, still cold stuff.
Absolutely.
South China Morning Post tells us that the chief executive there in Hong Kong, Leung Chun-ying, has urged Hong Kongers to be more like sheep.
What does that mean?
In his Lunar New Year message.
Like in dress, in behavior, in demeanor?
In vocal enunciation. No, I don't know, but he says it's the year of the sheep, actually, and the sheep is a very family-friendly kind of, dare I say, a docile animal. But he has encouraged people in Hong Kong to step up to the plate and be more sheep-like.
Well, this seems like a direct, comment addressed at the protests.
In a way, you could say it's a veiled reference to that.
She kind of behaved like each other.
Like a flock.
Behaving differently. Exactly. So behave well, I think, is the general message.
I think it could be in there. Speaking of someone who's stepping away from the flock, Oregon, making gubernatorial news in the USA. The new governor of Oregon, 54-year-old Democrat Kate Brown, who was sworn in after an influence peddling scandal led to the ouster of her predecessor, is the first openly bisexual governor, apparently, in the world.
Wow, good for her.
So, and in Oregon, they're like, no big whoop.
Exactly. So, Oregon is really, very and
very much so.
Very good place to be, I would say, a bisexual politician. Absolutely. I think very welcoming and okay, interesting.
Keeping it interesting
stuff.
there.
Yeah. Well, thank you for ending on a light note, Tony.
Thank you.
Thanks for this press review. And also joining us in studio is Channel 10 culture correspondent Chen Lieberman for the latest on the Oscars.
Yes, it's
just
coming.
2 days away.
Sunday night, we'll be up watching the Oscars.
That's
and I have to say, the Best Picture category, I don't see how it's gonna bring us a lot of interest. There's not really a major contender, and no one's gonna be a major surprise. If Selma doesn't get any prizes this Oscar, Selma, it's a movie about the African American Revolution and fight for equal rights. So that might create some stir because there were some allegations that there is racism in the Academy.
They were snubbed, weren't they?
Exactly, they were snubbed. I mean, they got Best Picture, but the actor didn't get the Best Actor nomination. And he's a great actor, and he did a great job getting into Martin Luther King's shoes. So we'll see. So that might create a stir, but other than that, there's not that many interesting stuff in this Oscar, except for the supporting actress category, in which Meryl Streep is a nominee, and this is her 19th nomination. So that's already a record-breaking number. However, if she wins, she'll even Katharine Hepburn's number of wins, because currently she has 3 Oscars. Katharine has 4, and if she gets this Oscar, she'll have 4 as well. And that's for her role in Into the Woods, movie based on the musical. It's funny because she gets nominations even for movies that critics hate.
Well,
she still manages.
So fabulous.
Exactly.
She's such a chameleon.
Exactly, but it's really hard to do a good job in a bad movie. I mean, it's not an easy thing. If the whole movie doesn't really work, then no one will notice your work as an actress. However, with Meryl, it seems to repeat itself every time. And she's 65. It doesn't really look like that, although she didn't do much work. It's not like Renée Zellweger, which you can't even recognize. It seems like
that was just because she claims she aged.
She aged, yeah.
She just claims, I haven't been in the limelight, I just aged.
Yeah,
no.
Too
puffy.
Yeah, exactly. That's
really
just not true.
Yeah, well, what's interesting to me is, Meryl was nominated 19 times. That's unbelievable. And she only won 3 times.
Yeah, it's funny. I thought of that as a different angle. You can say she's a winner, being nominated for 19 times, but you can also say she's a big loser.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, that's
lost so many times.
Not very good statistics on her side.
Right. But when it comes to the Oscar, it's great statistics.
Yeah.
But it seems like the Academy wants to nominate her every single time, maybe just to create that interest. I don't think she's going to win, I have to say. I mean, I'm not betting on her. No, I don't think she's going to win. No. And now let's move to Ghostbusters.
Yes.
That's not a movie that will get an Oscar nomination, but it's very interesting what's going to happen with that. So you probably heard about the all-female remake they're going to do with Kristen Wiig and Melissa McCarthy.
This is going to be hysterical.
Yeah, but and the big question is how much of a gimmick that is. Paul Feig, the director, said, when you do an all-male cast, no one tells you that's a gimmick, so why are you doing an all-female cast? Is called the gimmick. But
well, I mean, these actresses, you must acknowledge, are very silly. So it's it's kind of the nature of their craft as well, I think.
I mean, I think they're they'll be good at it, I think. But there's something about taking a movie and totally flipping it that for the fans, it's a big deal. And pushing the female agenda in such a harsh way, I'm not sure it's good for the female agenda. Because, I mean, what they're trying to do is saying female can be funny just as male can be funny, and let's just do it in a very direct and quick, in your face kind of way.
Oh,
she's gonna be
amazing. I guess. But the thing is, so Dan Aykroyd, the star of the two first Ghostbusters, who also wrote the two first Ghostbusters, he was like all like for the female cast, very supportive of that. But now he's saying he's still gonna do his conventional Ghostbusters 3. So on one hand, he's supportive, but saying that he's going to do his conventional Ghostbuster, that means that he's not really supportive. And I mean, I can understand him because I think he was very disappointed. The thing is, it sounds like he was very disappointed that they're doing the all-female cast because he was really looking forward to do his own conventional
do you think
Ghostbusters.
He just maybe feels like it's taking attention away from what was originally his, and he's feeling a bit, like his territory is being taken.
Yeah, I mean, affirmative action is all good and stuff, but still, this is his movie. He wrote it.
Well, I think
and the fans are
hysterical.
Also very upset that they're doing this because it's not a remake. It's just a whole different thing, and that's what Dan Aykroyd is trying to say now. He's like, I'm all good with that female cast. That's great. It's going to be a great film, but it's not going to be Ghostbusters. So let's.
You know what that kind of reminds me of is like the Claire Danes and Leo, Romeo and Juliet, because people were like, "What on earth?" It was just
I remember that movie. Wow, that was weird. That was a weird movie, but I kind of like the soundtrack.
Yeah. Of course. Yeah, we must love that. But, I think this whole Ghostbusters thing will be like Bridesmaids meets Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
I think it'll be funny. I don't care. I want to see it.
Yeah. The thing is, I'm a woman. I'm supposed to be all supportive of that initiative. However, as a Ghostbusters fan, I'm kind of like, I was waiting for so long for a Ghostbusters 3. And adding the Ghostbuster with this feminist agenda, that's just a big mashup of two things that are unrelated.
Yeah.
That's how I feel. So, what?
I think it's... will Sigourney Weaver be in it?
No.
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 Okay.
They're talking about the Indispensables 4 with a female cast, Sigourney Weaver. The whole thing is there's a big trend now. Hollywood finally realized that women are a good audience and a strong audience that you can count on. Younger kids who used to go to these big blockbusters are no longer going to the movie theaters. They're just downloading everything.
Right. We're getting
so
lazy.
they're trying to, so they're trying to get a newer audience, and that's why they're going to do a lot of action films targeted to women, to female audiences.
That's interesting. I didn't realize this was kind of it's
a trend
in the planning.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's not because the producers are such big feminists. They're just understanding the strength of this marketing power. That's it. So we'll talk about another spin-off, not a remake, a spin-off.
Okay.
Better Call Saul. It's a Breaking Bad spin-off, and turns out it's the biggest debut in cable TV. It had 9.8 million viewers for its first episode.
Unfortunately, that is all the time we have. I think we put a little too much time to Ghostbusters, even though I think it's a really interesting item. But Chen, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Tony.
Thank you.
Thank you as well. And coming up, stay tuned for more of the best of the morning edition, and we'll leave you with images of snow in Jerusalem. Yes, it's very cold here in Israel. We can feel it here in Tel Aviv. But look at these images, a big deal for a city where it rarely snows. And stay tuned for more of this morning's headlines. Thank you for watching.
Welcome back. It's still Thursday, February 19th, 2015. This is still the Morning Edition. I'm still Ded Grober. Thank you so much for staying with us. The 25 days left till the elections in Israel, campaign videos are taking a rather nasty approach. I-24 News senior editor Ruti Sinai, known for her nasty approach, is here to help us examine this matter and see if this approach is working or not. You're writing it down. All right. Ruti, let's first take a look at a report we have. Come back and hear all about it from you.
As Israel enters the final month of its election season, the buzz over viral campaigns is louder and stronger than ever. In the past weeks, the politicians dusted off their acting skills and provided humorous insights into their political agenda. After portraying a kindergarten teacher and a babysitter, Prime Minister Netanyahu joked about the supposedly marginal issues of his and his wife's alleged hedonistic lifestyle and expensive household. In the latest video, produced by Netanyahu's Likud party, it continues to lash out at Labour Party leader Isaac Bougie Herzog and especially his partner to the Zionist Union, Tzipi Livni, in an attempt to deter the Labour Party voters. Meanwhile, the Labour Party is working hard on breaking the soft image of its leader Herzog. After adding a famous publicist to the campaign, following criticism it wasn't generating enough attention, a new video hit the news feeds. The nasal voice of Herzog, which many claim is doing him the most harm in his attempt to be elected as premier, was altered in this clip to prove a point. And on the other side of the political map, the Jewish West Bank settlers have come under fire. A video dubbed The Eternal Jew, the same name as that given to a 1940 Nazi propaganda movie, was published. Consisting of anti-Semitic motives, left-wing organizations are depicted in it as Nazi Germany-era caricatures pleasing their anti-Semitic European masters for money. After causing a public storm and condemned by Netanyahu himself, the regional Samaria county denied knowledge of its existence. But according to Israeli Haaretz newspaper, the clip was presented by the Samaria Settlers Council to the county committee, and most of its elements were approved. As election date gets closer, it appears both sides are taking off the gloves and shifting into high gear, trying to take over the primary sources of news these days, social media.
Ruthie, it seems that with social media being like the tool for these elections, that all bets are off, the gloves are off, anything goes.
Yeah. Look, if it weren't so serious, some of these campaign clips are fairly amusing and creative, I have to say. True. There's two problems with them. One is that some of them are really beyond the pale, like the one we saw with the settlers, with the Nazi motifs. Jew. Yeah, the Eternal Jew, and Herr Stürmer and these horrible anti-Semitic motifs. The other problem with the clips is that they really they distort the public discourse. In other words, the discourse is about the clips rather than about issues. Right. And most of the clips are not about issues. They are, to an extent, about the security issue, but again, it's not anything that's discussed. It's just, it's to frighten, Netanyahu and Likud are saying...
The ISIS...
Exactly. If you vote for the center-left, you're voting essentially for Islamic State. Very simplistic, very black and white, and none of these issues are black and white. There's so much gray in the middle. Yeah. I suppose that's the nature of elections in some way, but in Israel, the culture of debate, which, not just debate between the two main contenders, but in generally debate, is not nearly as well developed as it is in other countries, the United States being one, Europe being another. And, the media has really been giving the politicians a pass, letting them, take this...
Talking about these videos,
right. Instead of talking about issues.
Instead about the topics themselves.
Exactly, yeah.
But I guess the question is, and that is the ultimate question that the candidates are asking their advisors, is do these videos work?
You know, it's a question of who you ask and who your pollster is, and so on. What's more interesting, by the way, if I may shift the question a bit sideways, is we had a controller's report coming out 2 days ago with some serious allegations of impropriety in terms of the Prime Minister's spending, the household expenses, and a poll that came out yesterday shows that it hasn't done him any harm.
Cares.
No, really, nobody cares. So, I think the bottom line is that, if you're going to vote Likud or the right, you're going to vote Likud or the right, and you're going to vote center-left. I mean, you may budge, within your bloc, but you're not from one party to another.
No, I guess you're not going to change, right?
Yeah,
if you plan to vote Likud, you're not suddenly going to vote for Bougie because you found out that the Netanyahu's called the electrician in.
Right, and because he has a cuter clip.
Right, right. But I guess what could happen is that you'd become so upset, so fed up with the situation that you won't go and vote.
I think that is
they're
a danger.
aiming for,
Absolutely, I think that is a danger. And the fewer people who vote, the more it benefits the right generally in past Israeli elections.
You think that even in this upcoming election,
lower turnout basically benefits the right because you have on the right an electorate that is more either more committed or more organized.
With belief.
Yes, exactly. More ideological, let's put it that way. And they're more organized. The ultra-Orthodox parties and some of these other parties basically, bus people, take people, they bring them in families and groups and neighborhoods, whatever. So
the left is one person per car.
I would say that's not a bad, except in the Arab sector. In the Arab sector, it's also very organized families, tribes.
It's interesting because of this merger of the Arab parties. We're not seeing much of the Arabs taking part in this game of campaigning, right?
I think it's a it's probably the most interesting, or one of the most interesting, phenomena in this very interesting campaign. I have to say, it's not been a dull moment. There's not been a dull moment. The Arabs, ironically, they had to unite because of Lieberman, who's the greatest nemesis, Foreign Minister Victor Lieberman, who
called for some drastic moves when it comes
against
to
the Arabs. What he did is he passed a law in the previous Knesset raising the electoral threshold, which showed the Arabs that if they didn't unite, they risk not getting in at all. So they united, which is something that nobody has managed to do in 60-some years of Israeli independence. So,
and now the polls show that they could be the third largest party.
Absolutely. They may well get 12 out of the 120 seats in the Knesset, which would make them, the third largest party, which is, incredible irony. Almost the tiebreaker between left and right.
Right, but they're still saying that pretty much it's obvious that whatever coalition will be built, they'll stay out of it.
Probably, yeah. Unfortunately, we're not yet at a place where Israelis would be willing to accept, more than one token, perhaps, Arab minister in the cabinet.
See, the interesting part, the way I see it, it's not just that the Israeli Jews won't have them. It's that they themselves are saying we're staying out.
I think under certain circumstances they might want to come in. Obviously depending on who's the head of this next government. No, I think there's a certain degree of maturity. That was true. Initially, it wasn't true.
At this point, you're thinking they're paying lip service to their voters?
I think to a degree, yes. Yeah. Because I think they understand it doesn't serve them to be always in the opposition.
Right. Ruti, thanks so much.
Thank you.
And now we're joined again by the one and only Anthony Grant for the viral spiral that is the web review. What do you think? Ruti turned out not to be nasty at all. I was bad-mouthing her for no reason.
She did talk about the media giving politicians a pass. Who does that bring to mind?
Who?
Joe Biden.
Joe Biden.
Yes.
Oh my
Yes.
God.
Joe.
Yeah, I knew you. I should have known you were going to go there.
Vice President.
The Vice President of the United States.
You get the word vice?
Vice.
Well,
nice.
he wasn't exactly
See, you're
being...
a little nasty after all.
Yeah, he was not exactly being virtuous when he was snuggling and sniffing the hair of Defense Secretary Ashton Carter's wife, Stephanie.
I have to say, when I first heard about this, I just heard about it, and I thought, well, it sounds like no big deal. It couldn't have been that
And then
bad.
you saw the evidence.
And then I saw the video, and I was like, oh my God.
It's not the first time, by the way.
Yeah.
He sniffed her hair before?
Not with her. He had he's had a bunch of these things. He had a woman biker.
Yeah. I
he
saw
had a woman
on
biker on his lap the other day at some.
I saw some picture online that said 50 Shades of Biden.
Ooh, I think one shade is more than enough for most of the American public.
He tried to kiss a 13-year-old girl.
Yeah, it was a little awkward.
Yeah.
It was a little awkward.
They do things a little differently in Delaware, you know. So anyway, more power or less to Biden. Shifting back to Israel,
and it was really weird there. Okay, yeah, let's move on.
Yeah, you can check it out online if you must. And anyway, little Nadav G. Can't pronounce his last name, 16-year-old. He is the talent of the Rising Star Israeli show, which is now sending him off to compete in Eurovision in May. So for Eurovision fans, of which you are a huge one,
of course.
This is exciting news for Israel.
What is the problem with pronouncing his name? Gwedge.
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 Gwedge? You don't think it's Gooch?
Gwedge. It's something, I guess there's a French sound to it.
As a French sound? Well.
So he's going to Vienna for the Eurovision Song Contest.
Yeah.
And that's interesting. You know, unknown, I guess, well, I don't know.
He could become famous. I mean, look, ABBA got their start at Eurovision. Olivia Newton-John, a lot of famous people started off, they weren't famous, but Eurovision made them so maybe Nadav is going to be the next.
What do you think of his chances? Did you hear him sing?
I did not yet, but I'm looking forward to. Because I'm sure he's got a fresh, young voice. And listen.
The next Mike Brandt.
The next Mike Brandt, perhaps.
Maybe.
Which 810 Fox is working on a film about him. Did you know that? Yes, exciting stuff. Yoko Ono, back in the news.
Yeah?
Yes, that's been announced that she's going to be having a retrospective at the MoMA, Museum of Modern Art, in New York, coming up, I believe, in May. And it's going to be called Yoko Ono, one-woman show from the 1960-1971 period. Now, it must be said that she did have an unofficial exhibit at MoMA in 1971 called Museum of Modern Fart. Yes. So we don't know how the next upcoming one is going to relate to that one, but you know.
What do you think of her of her work as an artist?
I mean, of her oeuvre? Well, I think you know, when you're in the shadow of John Lennon.
I don't want to say what I think, so I'm asking you.
I would say I admire the effort.
We know what you think, O'Dave.
Really?
I think
Is that obvious?
I admire the effort. As far as the result, I think she's got a long way toward being a Picasso. But you know,
I think that it shows, like, she married John. You know, she got that break, and then she just kept working. She really tried hard. She gets an A for effort.
Yeah,
that's for sure. But I don't know if she needs a retrospective in the MoMA.
The vision seems a little scattered. But listen, she is a personality, and it will bring people into the museum, and that'll be a good for culture generally, one could say. Zonda Rhodes. The fashion great was recently made a dame at Buckingham of the United Kingdom, I guess. There she is. This is interesting stuff because she dressed everyone from Jackie Jackie Onassis to Princess Diana, and a big fashion icon in the UK, kind of up there with Vivienne Westwood. So still rocking the pink hair look.
Nice.
So it's nice to see.
I like her style.
I wonder what the Queen thought of that.
Yeah.
You know, I know the Queen favors bigger hats, so I don't know.
Is there a chance that we'll see the Queen with a similar hairdo?
I sure would like to. Well, which Queen? Elton John, maybe. Anyway, speaking of
real
Queens,
Queen. Yeah.
Geraldo Rivera. Yes.
Ooh, is he still around?
He's still around. He is,
the man in the mustache.
Yes, there he is. He slammed hip-hop as being very destructive culturally.
Well, he should
I think that the Geraldo Rivera is very destructive.
You know, I gotta say, I don't know why he decided to weigh in on this raging debate at this particular time, but he has.
Didn't he have that picture that leaked?
The Instagram picture?
Yeah.
He leaked it himself. I mean, he was like, you know, see me roar, topless. We didn't really want to see that. That was kind of destructive culturally. Yes. Anyway, Geraldo on Fox News always keeping it interesting.
Yeah.
Anyways, guess who's killing the gram, which is slang for being really successful on Instagram.
Okay.
Amber Rose.
Killing the gram.
Yeah, she's become like the next Kardashian, you could say, in her provocative poses. Of course, she is mother of one, wholesome lady, and she is rocking a snakeskin-esque bikini in Trinidad for Carnival. So it's not all about Venice and New Orleans, it's also in Trinidad.
Last but not least,
Kim Kardashian was allegedly having a cleavage stylist assist her with her assets.
Pardon?
Yes, a cleavage stylist. Her rep has denied the charge. Do we?
I gotta get you one of those.
We could all use one of those now and again.
Thanks, Tony.
No problem.
Thanks, Ruthie.
Sure.
Still coming up later on the show, everything you wanted to know about the 2015 Oscars and all the cleavage stylists there. But first, some more of this morning's headlines.
Welcome back. It's still Wednesday, February 18, 2015. This is still the morning edition, and I am still Meredith Ross. Thank you for staying with us. Now, when you think about Afghanistan, you're probably not thinking about nightlife, clubs, or music, nor about successful women. Photojournalist Anna Loshkin went there and came back with the opposite photographed evidence. We're very happy to be joined in studio by Anna. Good morning.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So, why Afghanistan? What drew you to the country, and especially the women's issues there?
Well, I'm from, I was born and grew up in the former Soviet Union in Ukraine, and that part of the world was always in our, in our view. We grew up hearing about it, especially about the war in Afghanistan that started in 1979. And after I started doing photography, at some point I was very interested to see if the situation really was how people described it. And at the same time, reading so much about the oppression of women under the Taliban, I wanted to see how the situation changed for women.
And so how did you find that it changed? Because women still do suffer a lot of
course.
Issues there.
I would never say Afghanistan is an easy place to be a woman, but the people that I met and that I interviewed and that I photographed, really, their stories are amazing. Every time I went to interview somebody, it was just incredibly inspirational, actually, because people are fighting against the traditional norms of the society. Right. People are working within those norms to succeed in their personal life, in their professional life, and in a way it's changing the landscape of gender relations in Afghanistan slowly, but it is changing.
And we're seeing pictures here, obviously, that you took, and it's interesting to see how the appearance of women has evolved. They're showing more of the face, their hair. We're seeing kind of the clothing coming off a bit, which is really interesting. Here, a woman is completely without any sort of head covering. So how many women are like this? How many women are really kind of embracing more of almost a Western approach to life?
So there's definitely a distinction between the cities and between the countryside. And I didn't spend too much time in the countryside because of the nature of my project, which was about women leaders, and most always you're going to find them in the cities. Kabul is the capital, so it's a little bit different than the other smaller cities, but people are, it was never very popular in Afghanistan to have like a full kind of hijab like you have in a lot of Muslim countries. It was always a very loose sort of head covering, and people are, especially the young people, are very fashionable. They wear like tight jeans, it's just like, it's a more modest approach. Maybe they would wear a dress over those tight jeans. People wear
kind of
heels.
like what we see from Tehran.
Yeah,
sort of, up and coming.
I mean, it's not a law that you have to wear a headscarf, but it's culturally appropriate.
And we understand that there's still, the Taliban still is felt in the area?
For sure, there's definitely swaths of Afghanistan that are under Taliban control. Like, ostensibly, the government has no reach in certain parts of the country. Even there's neighborhoods in Kabul which are, contentious. But I think Kabul is a great place for women from other provinces to come and to be able to live a little bit, be able to go shopping or go to cafes, go to the cinema maybe. Well, not the cinema, because that's still considered very risque.
Off limits.
Yeah, it's considered not a place, like it's not an appropriate place for families to go, actually. But there are definitely more and more places popping up that are geared towards families, whether it's a restaurant with like a play area and maybe some video games, or like a recreational center where people can go in the evening with their kids or the wives.
So the kind of a family activities are still very much promoted, as opposed to women doing things on their own. Now, we understand you have some photographs in particular that you'd like to show and to talk about.
Yeah.
So let's can we have a look at the. Let's see if we can upload some of these images here, because I'd really like to see. Okay, so these are images that you've chosen. What are about these images that you really remember?
I've been to Afghanistan 3 times. Each time I spent about a month and a half there. And the more time I spent there, the more I saw that, like the women aside, which I think is just an amazing thing that these women are going outside the tradition of their society, I saw that there are a lot of people who had extra money who were trying to, have fun in the city. And all these places started to open up to kind of allow them to, let loose and live a little bit. So, for example, there's a bowling alley, and these places are.
I saw those images. I mean, it looked like anywhere. It could be here in Tel Aviv. It could be in California. I mean,
except for like maybe more conservative dress, and the fact that you don't see that many women by themselves, and also the women that I photographed for the Women Leaders Project. I explained the project to all of them. I talked to them about it. They were okay with being photographed. But in general, if you're going, into a place and asking to photograph women, they're going to be very hesitant to allow it, because it might come back to their families and they might be like chastised because of it. It might anger somebody in their family. They feel like it's their privacy being invaded. But also a lot of these places that are open in the evening, they're really geared more towards men.
Yeah, so let's talk about kind of the nightlife that's really upcoming in Kabul. So you said that these places are like clubs, places to go see music. It's men only?
It depends, but a lot of times it's men only. Like single women by themselves probably would not go to these places. Maybe they would go with their families, with their husbands, or maybe you might have a group of girlfriends, but that's more rare. But for example, the first photograph that you showed of the paintball, there are groups of girls that go and they play paintball, and they wear those fatigues, and but that's more of an afternoon pastime, and because it's especially that one. There's a number of paintball places in Kabul. Because that one is outside, it's really more for the afternoon.
So it's more accepted to kind of do activities during the day.
Yeah, in the evening time, there's no curfew or anything, but people feel like the city is not so safe in the evening time.
And I mean, when you went to these places, to these kind of men-only clubs and bowling alleys, how did you feel as a woman there taking photographs?
Well,
how were you received?
I was received very warmly, and for a lot of the men, they were very curious to talk to me. They were so interested to just exchange a few words with a woman who wasn't part of their family, who wasn't, in any way related to them. Because for a lot of them, they don't have many opportunities to talk to members of the opposite sex outside of their families. For some of them who go to universities, of course, they share, class space with women, or who work in maybe bigger organizations like the phone company or something. They have women colleagues. But if a lot of these guys, if they work in an office or if they work in a smaller business, they don't really get to converse with women in their daily lives.
So they really welcomed you. They really found it an interesting experience to encounter you. Now, you have a new project that you're working on. Can you expand on that?
The projects here in Israel, or
yeah.
Well, I'm about to start a project. There's one project that I'd like to do, which relates to the aliyah that came from the Arab world, and kind of when they came, say in the 50s, what kind of things that they were looking to bring with them, what kind of things they ultimately brought, and how those things play into their lives right now. So I'm about to start on that project.
Well, it sounds very interesting. We'd love to see that. We'd love to have you back, certainly, to discuss that when it's finished. Well, thank you very much, Anna, for being here this morning.
Thank you for having me.
And joining us again in studio for the web review is Anthony Grant. Tony, good morning again.
Hello again.
What do you have for us?
Well, speaking of women, powerful women, Sarah Palin. Completely different. Yeah, but completely, but woman, powerful. It would look great in anything, some people would say. But she got the cold shoulder apparently from Taylor Swift, as evidenced by that photo.
Okay,
yes.
I think sometimes the photos can be taken out of context.
Yeah, this one,
we do have a photojournalist sitting here.
Look,
Taylor could have just yawned or something.
I think that is more than a yawn. I think it's a sort of a semi-disdainful gaze in the opposite direction. Of course, Taylor famously said that she'd like to have anybody at her table. She's a very nice public persona.
Really is
but Sarah Palin's pretty divisive, polarizing figure. This was the Saturday Night Live 40th anniversary due. So again, a little bit of tension there.
Yeah, well, they looked like they were rubbing shoulders too. So a little close for comfort.
A little bit close for comfort. I'm not looking too happy, but guess who is looking happy?
Who?
Pharrell Williams. Yeah, he's got a new book deal.
Really?
For kids' books, based on the tune "Happy."
Okay.
Yeah, look at that. It's
why not? That was an incredibly successful song.
4
why
picture
not turn
books.
it into an enterprise?
Exactly. It's gonna, at least one of these 4 books is gonna feature actually photographs of kids from around the world celebrating what it means for them to be happy, with an initial print run of 250,000, which is huge.
That's huge.
That's a huge print run for any kind of book.
They know it will be massively
It's going to be a big hit and coming out in the fall. But again, really interesting how one pop song, has that kind of trickle down influence. And to get kids to read or look at pictures or both is something that
I think it's one of those the songs of the decade. I think really. So.
Yeah, it is. Although when we talk about songs of the decade, of course we think of Whitney Houston. May she rest in peace. And of course, when I mentioned the Bobby Christina Brown saga, which is ongoing. This is, of course, her daughter with Bobby Brown, who was still on life support in a hospital somewhere in Atlanta. And according to this story here, her lover or boyfriend, we're not really sure which, Nick Gordon, has actually got her name inked on his arm as a show of support, but Bobby Brown will not let him in to visit with her. It's a very strange story.
I mean, what could happen? He just wants to see his girlfriend.
Show a little bit of support, but we know that was a very rocky relationship between Whitney and Bobby Brown. So again,
history repeats itself.
It sounds like a mini-series in the making.
Yeah, well,
but
it's really sad. It doesn't look like too good. The odds for her.
Medically, I mean, she's apparently stable, but again, not looking too great at the moment. So a lot of interest in that. This wedding invitation kind of went viral because of its unusual content. I don't know if you've heard about this. Let's say you're getting married and you don't want to invite your parents because they were really mean to you for your whole life. So what do you do when they insist on getting invited? You basically craft an invitation, which...
this is of course Jezebel.
Yes, but something like more like 200,000, views of this, or that's like the starting point, and that's only part of the text. There, it goes on. It is a whopper. Yeah. And again, it's just weddings bring out all sorts of emotions, don't they?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I don't know. You must really hate your parents to do something like that.
Issues.
That's kind of irreversible.
Yeah, a little kind of, but guess who? On a more lovely note, how did George Clooney and Amal Clooney spend Valentine's Day? Hello Magazine asks that question. Yeah.
I would guess, Lake Como.
Actually, they had sushi in Studio City, California. Yeah, they went.
I guess they are a normal couple.
It's really weird. You would think that they would, jet off to, I don't know, Saint-Tropez or something. But no, I mean, she took a break from her busy caseload, being an attorney, and they went to hotspot Anisobu in Studio City and just had some fish.
Yeah. I actually like that.
Yeah, kind of down to earth, so good stuff.
It's like celebrities. They're like us.
Exactly, they have to eat too.
Go for sushi.
Yeah, but what has Amber Rose been eating? Okay. Amber Rose is in one of the meanest tweet slams with the Kardashians on record. I don't really know. We talked about where this could be coming from psychologically, but she has basically said, publicly, you know, what are you doing saying anything at all, seeing as how your father is a professional football player that got away with murder? She is basically pointing the finger at Khloe Kardashian saying, guess what, your dad's O.J. Simpson.
Well, and she knows that that's a sensitive issue because Khloe feels that she doesn't look like her siblings. I know a lot about the Kardashians.
And there could be reasons for that.
and you know, there have been DNA test rumors and stuff like that. She knows that this is a sensitive issue.
And she just goes right for it.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, just for those...
Rose, cool it. Stop what you're doing right now, because this is not good PR.
You know, again, it's keeping her in the headlines, and it just brings up all the O.J. Simpson stuff because, of course, you know, Kris Jenner was a friend of O.J. Simpson, and Khloe's real, shall we say, father, Robert Kardashian, was O.J.'s attorney. So, I mean, it's really like dredging up all of the sort of Los Angeles, you know, bitterness.
Yeah.
But again, we're not really sure why. And are they going to be working this into Keeping Up with the Kardashians on the show? That would be really interesting.
You know what? I don't think so, because I don't think they want to give her the time of day. They don't want to give her that publicity.
Yeah, you're right.
You're right. You know, any press is good press.
Yeah, especially for Amber Rose at this moment in her career, I think one could say. So, Jerry Adams, back in the news. Yeah, Sinn Féin. He says that he likes to jump on his trampoline in the buff with his dog. Now, I'm not sure why.
I kind of understand that.
I mean, I don't know about this. I mean, you know, say what you will about the man's politics, but the dog, I don't know if that's safe for the dog.
It's not.
It's not.
No.
No. Anyway, he's keeping things interesting in Ireland.
Yeah.
In the meantime, in the Thrillist.
I just can't get that image out of my mind.
I think I don't want the image.
What kind of dog?
Because
that kind of changes the image.
An Irish setter?
Okay, probably.
No, I don't know, but you know, hopefully not a pug. Thrillist ranks the top presidential presidents by their level of partying. Yeah, very interesting stuff. And guess who's number?
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, number one, James Buchanan. Yeah, apparently he used to complain that champagne bottles were too small. So this was like...
but is that why they invented those massive ones that no one ever uses and just puts on display?
Yeah, I think Buchanan was into those.
Okay.
You know, so,
I will now coin that a Buchanan. Okay, well, unfortunately, we have run out of time, but interesting stuff. Tony, thank you for this. And coming up next, we take a look at sports, art, and business in the Ivory Coast. But first, let's hear some more of this morning's headlines.